All right. Chapter 8, Sexual Behaviors. I bet that most of you guys were like, hey, I'm going to take this class. Human sexuality. Sounds interesting, kind of sexy. I wonder what could be in there. Maybe they'll talk about things like oral sex and whatnot. And it's like, well, you've come to the right chapter. Chapter 8, Sexual Behaviors. We're going to talk about, we're not going to talk about every single sexual behavior that you could possibly do because I don't know that many. But we're going to talk about, the vast majority of what people engage in. Okay, so before we begin on actually just going through all the different behaviors like anal sex or oral anal sex and all that stuff, it's good to ask the question to begin with, what is sex? Is it penile-vaginal intercourse? That's what a lot of people think. But a lot of people think that it's not that as well. So it's not like it would be very heteronormative of someone to say, two guys who are in a relationship. Let's do two women who are in a relationship, and are you gonna say that they haven't had sex because they haven't had penile-vaginal intercourse? I surely hope not. Would you consider, of course no one would, but would you consider rape to be sex if it was penile-vaginal rape? Hopefully not. Hopefully you wouldn't consider that sex. So what I'm trying to say is here that the act of penile-vaginal intercourse does not dominate our conception of sex. So this is a really good book, and last time I taught this course, I had people do readings from this and write papers on it. I think there's a more updated edition than this one, and it's more philosophy than it is psychology. But I think philosophy is related to psychology. There's a lot of different stuff in here that you can check out. So just to look at a few of these, like Chapter 8 is Cybersex, Sex by Louise Collins. Masturbation, again, by Alan Sobel. Sexual Behavior, Another Position by Janice Moulton. And there's a lot in here. But what I want us to focus on right now is Greta Christina. She wrote, Are We Having Sex Now or What? And I think actually the PDF of this book is online. So you can look it up and actually read this article. If you want. It's very easy to read and really interesting and everything. And that's kind of her consensus. She thinks, she starts out saying, when I was young, or just like over at the beginning of her sexual activity or whatnot, she liked to count how many people. She's like, well, I've had sex with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And how do I know that? Because I had penile-vaginal intercourse with each of them. And it's like, okay. And then she started having sex with women. And she's like, that was definitely sex. That was maybe even more like sex than sex I've had before. So how many people have I had sex with? Sort of thing. That's how she starts out, but she's pretty eloquent and whatnot. So, questions like, is really just erotic kissing alone, does that constitute sex? And so this is the main slide that you can answer the discussion question. Like if you listen to this slide and then answer the discussion question, it's basically what do you think sex is the discussion question today. That's, yep. So we already talked about that, when men have sex with women. Here's another important point that I think men usually fall into the belief of, more so than women for the most part, that it must include an orgasm. I had someone in my class last year who argued that sex is only sex if there is simultaneous orgasms between two people, both people at the same time. So that would really limit, number of people who are having sex. And, what about if you're not even into it, but you kind of go through the motions or whatever? And it's like, is that sex? So just getting your noggin thinking there on this stuff. I like this quote. I think it may be from our chapter, Ellison, in 2000. Once you have begun to think of sex as creating mutual erotic pleasure rather than as manufacturing orgasms, sex is a continuum of possibilities. You may find, for example, that low-key genital, or even non-genital, stimulation can be surprisingly erotic and relaxing. So Ellison's stance is all about creating mutual erotic pleasure, which can be done in a myriad of ways. Sexual minorities, so LGBTQ plus people, have more expansive and creative repertoire of sexual activity than normative opposite-sex couples. So Nichols found that in 2000, and it's something good to keep in mind while we're going through this. Let me see what minute I'm at right now. Let's see, 34. Okay. All right, so now we'll get to it without further ado. So we'll talk about solo sexual activity. I'm not sure if that's exactly like what, I don't know if, I think things are studied in the literature more by like masturbation or things like erotic fantasy. I'm not sure if people study like solo sexual activity. I just wrote that just so it'd make more sense to you guys. So solo sexual activity, partnered sexual activity. So partnered, kissing, touching, penile-vaginal intercourse, everyone's whatever. And oral genital, so oral sex. And then, cunnilingus if the person receiving is female, fellatio if it's the male is receiving oral sex, penile anal sex, so better known as anal sex. Analingus, also known as, I'm not going to say it, that's fine. Okay, oral anal sex. So we'll talk about that too, believe it or not. Alright, so solo sexual behaviors. We'll talk about masturbation first. Alright, I wish I did this graph a little bit different. So I got this data from your book, and this basically from a survey that asked people, have you ever masturbated? Ever? And it's showing the difference between men and women, men being the salmon color and then women being this yellowish orange color here. And so we can see that about 94% of men report, yes, I have masturbated before. And then we see that 82% of women say, yes, I've masturbated before. So what I would like to have done with this graph is for the bottom to be 0 and for the top to be 100%. So if you imagine it that way, this gap right here would seem a lot less because we're comparing 94% to 82%, which is relatively close. So it begs the question, do women masturbate less? Have women masturbated ever less than men? This data suggests that that's true, but you don't know for sure. So just kind of going over the general prevalence. So it's, most people, vast majority of people have masturbated in these surveys who are asked. Keep looking. Oh, he's here to do the water tank. Let me take a break, and that'd be funny if you heard me talking about this stuff while he's changing the water tank and stuff. Hold on. So I'm going to attempt to give this lecture while he's replacing the hot water tank. Hopefully it won't take too long, but kind of running out of time on being able to get this to you guys. So kind of have to do it now because I don't have a place that I can go do my work in. I have to work from home like all you guys. All right. Purposes of masturbation. When you just ask people, why do you masturbate? People list all sorts of reasons. Of course, you would imagine people say, well, I masturbate because it feels good. Okay, cool. Means of sex self-exploration. So what does that mean? So let's say you have a man and a woman who are engaging in sexual activity and whatnot, and let's say the woman is not so satisfied with this sexual encounter, and the guy, he's a little bit confused, he's like, well, I thought that if I rub it in a circle, I don't know, then it's going to pleasure you or whatever. And it's like, okay, so if in this example, if the lady has, explored herself and found, the ways in which she likes to be stimulated and whatnot, then she'd be able to communicate that to her sexual partner. So it's masturbation is a way to explore ourselves so that we are able to know what feels good, what feels bad, and be able to communicate that. And some people say that they masturbate in order to relax. Masturbation, orgasm, like the resolution that we talked about, that's often accompanied with relaxation, feeling relaxed afterwards, especially after orgasm. Some people say that it helps them get to sleep. And some people say, I'm just really sexually tense and I can't get my mind off of sex or something like that, and then they masturbate and they're able to, go about their day and do whatever it is they want to focus on if it's not sex. All right, some other reasons that people talk about masturbating. So can aid in closing a sexual desire disparity between a couple. Let's say there is these two ladies, Lady A, Lady B, who are in a relationship with each other. And Lady A has a high sexual desire and Lady B has a low sexual desire. Not clinically low, just low. And Lady A is like, let's have sex all the time. Lady B is like, let's not have sex all the time. Let's have sex, but not all the time. And so masturbation in that case could help things for Lady A. And yeah. All right. This is an interesting little quote here. I think I got this from your book. People who masturbate more often also engage in sexual activity with their partners more frequently than other individuals who masturbate less often. So it's kind of, you could say, a myth for some people who are in a sexual relationship. They're like, sorry, I lose my train of thought kind of easily sometimes. Guy came in. So people who masturbate, I mean, oh my gosh, hold on. Okay, so myth that two people in a relationship, let's say it's Lady A and Lady B again, Lady A with a high sex drive, Lady B with a lower sex drive. Lady B may believe, if my partner is masturbating and she should only be having sexual activity with me. So that is, a belief of some people in relationships. And what this Lawman studied and found in 1944 is that people who masturbate more often actually engage in even more sexual activity with their partners than people who don't masturbate as much. So that's a pretty interesting research finding. Okay, ways that people pleasure themselves sexually. Specific techniques for masturbation vary, especially among women, I do believe. Right. Women use a greater variety of stimulation techniques, especially in the department of toys and vibrators and all that sort of stuff, and actual just like movement with fingers and whatnot, as opposed to men tend to masturbate pretty similarly to each other by and large, if you're going to compare men and women to each other. All right, sex toys. So vibrators, simulation sex toys. So for men who want to masturbate into something that feels like a vagina, could use a fleshlight. You can look that up if you want to. And so, yeah, about 50% of people report using sex toys. So that's, men, if you ask men and women and whatnot, then about 50% of those people say that they use sex toys. 50% say, I don't use sex toys. Most likely, in all these surveys, as you know, are anonymous and whatnot. So most likely they're telling the truth. So dildos, so not just, your battery operated sex toys. You also got just like general standalone manual dildos that people use. And so, it's not just for women, it's for men as well. Let's see, no, I didn't have a picture of it, but anyway, there is evidence dating back to 6,000 before Christ, BCE, of dildos. So it's pretty interesting that people have been using, so they, don't want to just have intercourse and whatnot. People actually go out of their way to fine objects or fashion objects and whatnot for sexual stimulation. So more on sex toys. It's the use has increased since 2000. So let's go to like 1990 and then go to 2000, 2010, 2020. Each of those decades is a continual increase and that people are using these sex toys and whatnot. So perhaps it's in our society is becoming more normal or accepted to use sex toys and whatnot. And it's probably don't even need the word appears here. Research seems to show that sex toys are more prevalent among gay men and men who identify as gay and men who identify as bisexual. Seems to be more into sex toys. So 79% of gay and bisexual men, about 80% say, yeah, I've used a sex toy before. And so, that could be either something to stimulate the penis or probably their anus. Okay, this is interesting. 90% of women who masturbate with a vibrator are comfortable talking to their partner about it. So, I'm not sure why I put that, but it's interesting to know. Okay, that's why I put it. Some men are threatened by vibrators, poor guys. And, but 90% of women feel comfortable talking to their partners about their sex toys, so we can say maybe 10% of women are not comfortable talking to their partners about their vibrator use and may hide it and stuff like that. But, hopefully they are able to open communication with their partner if they want to. All right, so we're going to talk about not just like how often do people masturbate, what about men and women, women versus men, and stuff like that. We're going to talk about like what is our society, how does our society view masturbation? Basically, is it moral, immoral sort of stances? And that matters because, let's say, the entire world thought that it was immoral to masturbate. I think that the individual experience of masturbating would be much scarier and uncomfortable for the most part if the entire world thought that it was immoral to masturbate. So as far as the Catholic stance, which I think that it may be a tendency for us to say, Catholics. Well, it's just Catholics and, they're just over here and, who cares? I'm not religious or whatever. It's important to know like what one of the dominant religions has to say about this sort of thing, because it, whether we like it or not, influences people's beliefs about these behaviors. So this is the current Catholic stance. This is not 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago, 100 years ago. This is the current Catholic stance. That masturbation, men, women, trans men, trans women, all people, masturbation is intrinsically and seriously disordered act. Morally unacceptable. That's from the Vatican and Pope John Paul II. And the main argument is that since masturbation cannot result in conception, then it is morally unacceptable. That all sex should be open to fertility and having a child and whatnot. So you can see how they made those conclusions, and yeah. So more Judeo-Christian type stuff. Society. Oh yeah, this is really bad stuff. So I'd like to know like exactly when all this sort of stuff happened, but like in like which countries, but it's somewhere like in the West, so probably like Western Europe, maybe 1,000 years ago would be my guess, but just all sorts of stuff to make sure that people weren't masturbating. So it doesn't just stop at like the Pope saying no one should masturbate. It doesn't stop there. Like people actually, like this image shows here, would physically force a person into not masturbating. So things like circumcisions, I don't know how that would work, but suturing the foreskin shut, so like over the, not the shaft, but the tip of the penis, surgically removing the clitoris in order to force a woman not to masturbate. Horrendous things. Applying carbolic acid to the clitoris. I mean, jeez. Tying hands at night. Really just trying to force everyone to behave in the same way or whatever. I don't know. And then, it wasn't just necessarily religion exactly. See this physician here, even Samuel Tissot, told people that, and we've talked about this before, that masturbation causes blindness and causes you to become weak and frail, and just it's just so much just trying to control other people's sexuality. It's mind-boggling. Let's see what we're at. All right, lecture 2 of 2 for this week. Talk about erotic dreams and fantasy. And sorry for the noise in the background, but my hot water tank is being installed. Old one went bad. No good. No good. Alright. Oh, gotta put my clicker back in. Use this fancy little clicker here. Oh, that was the problem there. I guess I can just use the mouse. Alright. A good definition, just general definition, what are we talking about when we're saying erotic dreams and fantasy? You know how psychologists like to operationally define things. So they would say that, this is sexual experiences taking place within the mind. An interesting philosophical question is well, is that even then still sex if it's just within the mind? But we won't go there. So there's sexual experiences taking place within the mind consciously, where you're actually engaging in visualization and fantasy and things like that, and you're directing how things go and generating your own content and all that sort of stuff. Personalize your sexual experience in your mind consciously. And then there's also unconsciously. So a lot of people have dreams that have sex in it. So as far as dreams, if you ask everybody, a lot of people, have you ever experienced a dream where you're engaging in sexual activity? And about 90% of people say, yep, I think that I've definitely experienced that. And I wonder, just based off of like how well people actually remember their dreams to begin with. People don't really remember. We dream like four times, 4 separate dreams at least a night, like in a given 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep, and most people are like, it's like, what did you dream about last night? Oh, I didn't have any dreams. Research shows that you did, like at least 4, and so I just wonder like how good people are actually remembering. So I just wonder if this percentage is actually a little low. Maybe it is actually. I wonder. That would be interesting research. I don't know how you would figure it out, but if 100% of people have sexually related dreams. We just talked about that. So nocturnal emission or nocturnal orgasm. So it's mostly associated with men, like a nocturnal emission, having an orgasm during sleep. So, I'm not sure if necessarily like every time a guy ejaculates like while he's dreaming, is he necessarily dreaming about sex? I don't know about that. Alright, so now a more conscious fantasy. So I use that that term visualization, and that's just like consciously generating content in your mind's eye or whatever. So this could be like daydreams. A lot of people, do this sort of fantasizing while they masturbate and whatnot. Some people engage in fantasies even when they are having sex with a partner, and that's kind of, I guess, controversial depending on the relationship and whatnot. I think that some people would consider that a bit threatening. Like if you're having sex with me and you're fantasizing about someone else, is that right for the relationship and whatnot? I don't know, but people do it. I'm sure it's fine with people who are fine with that. But interestingly enough, if you ask people not necessarily the last time, but have you ever thought about maybe someone else? Imagined you having sex with someone else while you're having sex with this other person. 95% of people will say, "Yeah, I've done that." If you ask people like, why do you engage in erotic fantasy other than just like pleasure and masturbation? I mean, that's basically it. But I guess the interesting one here is expression of the forbidden. So basically, I think that sometimes it can be really arousing for people to fantasize about things that they haven't done before, things that they couldn't do, or, fantasy. It's not necessarily real, but like forbidden things. So things that may be a little edgy as far as societally and whatnot, but are, arguably safe within your mind. So people do that. Research shows that women can orgasm from fantasy alone. Broad in 2013 found women saying this. I wonder. I mean, a nocturnal emission for men would be a man orgasming from. I guess that would be dreaming alone. So I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there's got to be at least one guy out there in the world who can have an orgasm from fantasy alone, but tends to be mostly women. So, yeah, this question here, that's like, this is a very psychologically related question and investigation that's like just very applicable to a psychologist who's interested in these topics. Does erotic fantasy, just a simple research question, does fantasizing help your relationship, your sexual relationship, your romantic relationship, or does fantasizing is that a hindrance to your romantic relationship? And I bet there's probably more research on this, but I'm not for sure. But Goldman in 2006 concluded that fantasies tend to be helpful. So I bet it's a guy, but he or she, I'm not sure, said that fantasizing, whether it's about another person or who knows, the content of the fantasies, I'm not sure if that was studied or whatnot, but fantasizing about various things seems to show that that's helpful for the relationship. Now, why is that? I'm not sure. Maybe, people want to have sex with a lot of different people, but they're in a committed monogamous relationship, and they feel like they're missing out or something in some way on not being able to have sex with other people and whatnot. And it may help that particular case of a couple to have a better relationship if one person doesn't feel like they're being relegated or tied down to one person. I don't know. That's just a thought. It is too hot in this room. Hold on, I'm going to turn it down. So here we go. So here's some more updated research. Those report less guilt about fantasies. So yeah. So basically, people who don't feel guilty about fantasizing and whatnot tend to report higher levels of sexual satisfaction with their partner. So, this may be a case of a couple who they have actually talked about it and said, I like to fantasize about X, Y, and Z. And maybe the partner's like, yeah, that's okay. I'm fine with that or whatever. And so in that case, the person probably wouldn't feel very guilty about the fantasies that they're having and whatnot, even if they're not about, one's partner and whatnot. And those cases, they seem to report higher levels of sexual satisfaction, which is cool. Sexual fantasy is usually advocated by sex therapists. So now we're talking about, up here we're just talking about, like, we'll say, normal, non-clinical people And then here, we're talking about people recommended by most sex therapists, so talking about people who are coming in with sexual, psychological difficulties and whatnot. But sex therapists say that sexual fantasies help people experience arousal and orgasm during sexual activity. So clients coming in who are having a tough time becoming aroused or having a tough time achieving orgasm and whatnot, a lot of sex therapists will start working with the clients and talking to them about, engaging in their mind in different sexual things and whatnot, and it seems to help with people who have trouble getting aroused and having orgasm. Okay, and so this is kind of the opposite finding. So see, we're seeing like a little theme emerge in this research here. Low sexual fantasy prevalence is associated with lower sexual desire and arousal. So people who are just, generally don't have much sexual desire, kind of on the lower end of things, or don't, not too aroused and whatnot, they don't fantasize that much. It's not necessarily a mind-blowing finding or anything. Okay, so here's a contradictory finding to what we saw earlier, and this is a little earlier in research, 2001. Fantasizing privately during sex with a partner can erode intimacy in the relationship. So you see different findings there. So if you're really interested in this topic, you could read this paper by Perelman, and then one of the papers from the last slide saying that fantasizing with a partner helps the relationship. It's like, which one's right? You gotta read to make a conclusion on your own. Oh, that's interesting. So 1998, they studied people, that's interesting, who fantasized about, so let's say Jack and Jill are in a relationship, and Jill has a friend with Jane, and Jack is fantasizing about Jane. So mutual friend fantasy often leads to jealousy. Yeah, because that's oftentimes, actually a legitimate concern, not necessarily a rational jealousy. Okay, and so like if we were in person right now, it would be great for us to break into groups and talk about this, or just talk about it amongst ourselves. Is fantasizing about your partner's friend, is that cheating and therefore bad for the relationship, or is it okay like the other research suggests? And most likely I would imagine that y'all would eventually conclude something along the lines of, it depends on the relationship. So, yeah, depends on whether everyone's okay with fantasizing about that friend. But I'd like to see the prevalence rates on that. Like, what percent of people in relationships are okay with their partner fantasizing about like their best friend or something like that. That would be interesting. All right, gender differences. So just hopefully they've studied various gender non-binary and sexual fantasy, but as y'all have come to know, they probably haven't yet. But so we're just going to look at men versus women. So men fantasizing sexual fantasies and whatnot tend to be more active. Like they are their fantasies are like them having sex with a woman or something like that. So like the example that I give here is like focusing, and this comes from your book, on like what they want to do to a woman's body, sort of thing. And that's what research tends to show that men report. And men tend to be more active in their sexual fantasies, and then women who are engaging in sexual fantasies tend to be more passive and focusing on the men's attraction towards them. Yeah, so things, I don't know, yeah. So, and then research on like actual, so if you read a erotic story, so read a little like narrative about like a couple having sex or whatever, the more explicit it is about like body parts and lubrication and blah 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 blah, the more aroused men are. And then for women though, they seem to like the erotic stories that are implicit and explicit. So while they do like some of the explicit stuff that I was just mentioning before, women also really tend to like the implicit sort of stuff, like a romantic story, more about the romance and kind of like the relationship and interaction between the people who have a sexual connection to each other. Men fantasize about sex more often, describe fantasies more vividly, and more interested in acting out fantasies. Let's say if I have no. Okay, so this isn't like a men-women comparison exactly, but if you just ask men versus women, how often do you fantasize about sex? Men tend to report that they fantasize about sex more often than women. And they describe their fantasies more vividly than women do. Oh, it is a man-woman comparison, yeah. And they report being more interested in actually acting out their fantasies as well. Some specific things that men tend to report is fantasizing about anal sex, having anal sex, and also they report often their fantasies about watching their female partner having sex with someone else. So that's pretty interesting. Alright, so we're finally making it to partnered sexual behavior. That whole time we were talking about just solo sexual activity for the most part. Alright, so we'll talk about kissing and touching first. And that's like, I'm just taking this from like some of the subheadings from our book and whatnot. So I think this is cool. I think this might have been in your book as kind of just like, I like this this poem. I'll read it to you guys. This is from E. Cummings, or I'm pretty sure. I think he did a lot of the like not capitalized on the first line and whatnot. So I think the poem's titled "I Like My Body When It's With Your." I don't know why it's not called "I Like My Body When It's With Your Body." But anyway, I like my body when it's with your body. It's so quite new a thing. Muscles better, nerves more. I like your body. I like what it does. I like its hows. I like to feel the spine of your body and its bones and the trembling, firm smoothness in which I'll again and again and again kiss. I like kissing this and that of you. I like slowly stroking the shocking fuzz of your electric fur, and what it is comes over parting flesh, and eyes big love crumbs, and possibly I like the thrill of under me, you, so quite new. So I kind of get this, like, I don't know, kind of like this swirling bodies just touching each other and all that sort of thing from an arousal aspect of it, from just kissing and touching. So, as we all know from basic anatomy and physiology and whatnot, that there are a lot of nerve endings in our lips. This is kind of like an explanation of why people kiss so much, sort of thing. It's because it feels good. And why does it feel good? Because of all the nerve endings and whatnot. Kissing, I don't really have to tell you the guys this, but can be intense okay, what I'm trying to say with this point here is that kissing, alone, not doing anything else, even if like you got in a relationship with someone and all you did was like passionate kissing and stuff for like a year or whatever, that kissing and whatnot can be intense, erotic, and profound. Profound meaning they're feeling like a deep sense of connection to another person. So it's not like you feel like you have to have penile-vaginal intercourse. Yet again, that's what the point that I'm trying to make, in order to have like a really profound, meaningful experience. Yep, kissing can be with closed mouths, open mouths, French kissing, da-da-da. There's a variety of ways that people can express their love and whatnot towards each other. So licking, biting, mild biting on all places of the body. Just things that people do. So Western practices of kissing are not universal. So it's just good to kind of note it's not like all humans throughout time have always expressed their love for each other through joining of lips and whatnot. That's not necessarily true. So there's like different societies in Africa. It looks like tribes. So Teifer, I think, is an anthropologist, found that these tribes or these societies in Africa were not all that big on kissing each other. And I think even some societies found it repulsive, I do believe. So 252 M and J. I think that's wrong, but it's not M and J. I think it's from, I think I was thinking Masters and Johnson or something, but this is just right in your book here. Oh. $252. Okay. Oh, I like this quote a lot. And this kind of really drives home the point that I was trying to make. Alright. Touch is an end in itself. It is a primary form of communication. A silent voice that avoids the pitfall of words while expressing the feelings of the moment. It bridges the physical separateness from which no human being is spared, literally establishing a sense of solidarity between two individuals. Touching is essential pleasure, exploring the textures of skin, the suppleness of muscle, the contours of the body, with no further goal than enjoyment of tactile perceptions. Yeah, so just kind of, honing in on that point of like how intimate kissing alone can be. I don't know if we're in,